Tonight's guest is Hannah Woolery. Hannah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Vic.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate your time. Hannah, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
I am 29 years old. I'll be turning 30 next month, and I grew up in the hills of Oregon House, which is up by Brownsville, Browns Valley area on the other side of Collins Lake. Back in the olden times, my grandpa and his family owned some property that was in Oregon House. It was in a canyon area, and there was an Indian burial ground there, some other houses and ranches down the way. At one point, the government actually took away their property, and then they turned it into a lake. So now that is now known as Collins Lake. We've been up there for a very long time as far as us Wooleries. And my dad has always lived up there up until about 2013 when him and my parents moved to Palermo, which is near Oroville, California. I got married in 2013 and I moved down to Yuba City with my now ex-husband. And I currently live in Chico, California. I have a beautiful 6-year-old daughter. We've been listening to you for a while now, thanks to my brother. And we have had multiple friends throughout the years up in Oregon House that we have talked to as far as any kind of encounters, any interesting things that have gone up in the hills and everything. And I had a few myself as well. My mom and my brother have been listening to your show for a bit and told me that it was about time to talk to you and see about sharing my encounter as well.
Well, I'm so glad you reached out to me to let me know about your encounters. That's great. I'm glad you did that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You are welcome. Hannah, when you were 6, you had your first Dogman encounter. Do you think that shaped your life, or would you say that experience didn't have that profound of an effect on your life?
I didn't really realize about the encounter until I was about 14 years old after what would have been my second encounter. So as far as shaping my life, probably not as much, but knowing as far as the timeline that the Dogmen have been around, it really helped put a perspective on for me.
Well, when you can put it into perspective, that definitely helps you deal with it. So, yeah, I'm glad you're able to do that.
Yeah.
Considering what happened to you that night when you were 6, would you say that was the most traumatic encounter you've had? Because obviously, as listeners are going to hear, you've had your fair share of them.
No, that was actually probably the easiest encounter I've had. My second encounter was probably the hardest one that I've had.
I see, the second one. Yeah, the reason why I was starting to wonder if it might have been the first one is how old you were when you had that first encounter. You were 6. At any age, a Dogman encounter can be pretty hard to deal with, but when you're 6, yeah, that makes it really difficult.
Very much so. At the time, I thought that it was a bear because that's what my cousin thought that it was, and that's what she mentioned. So at the time, I didn't think about it and just thought, wow, bears are pretty creepy. We have them up in this area, and I don't want to come encounter with them again, seeing that they're so big.
Well, yeah, I guess bears can be creepy, but Dogmen definitely are.
Most definitely.
Oh, yeah. When you were 14, there was a movie that you were really taken by. Please expand on that for us.
I was absolutely obsessed. And when I say obsessed, I mean I stayed home from church to record and watch Dog Soldiers all the time. I was obsessed with the military, but especially werewolves is what I've always called them. And the movie's honestly cheesy, but I really like it. I was obsessed with it for years. When I got older, I bought it on Blu-ray, and I've watched it so many times since, probably at least 100. So that movie and Lord of the Rings tend to be my top 2 that I watch over and over again.
Wow, you've watched it 100 times?
For sure. I would watch it almost every single day, or at least every week when I was 14. It was eventually when I decided to buckle down and focus on school so I could graduate with my brother that I would just sit there and turn it on. And as I was working on homework, it was the same movie over and over and over again. It was familiar. And then a part would come up that I remember. I'm like, oh, I want to watch this part. So I'd freeze on my homework, watch it, and then move on, and then just keep playing it over and over again.
Wow, you must have really liked that movie 100 times. That's a lot.
Yeah. Even getting older, I still probably seen it a good 20 times in the last year.
Wow, yeah, that is a lot. And yeah, it is a cheesy movie, but that still doesn't stop it from making the hair in your butt stand up.
True. Very true.
Are you saying it makes the hair in your butt stand up? Oh, never mind. Never mind. Forget I asked that.
That's a good one.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
That's okay. Of course.
Hannah, your mom, brother, and your sister have always been interested in paranormal things. What more can you tell us about that?
I know my mom has always been very interested in anything sci-fi, but especially as far as Dogmen, or what we used to call werewolf. She, I feel, took even more of an interest after I told her about my encounter the very next morning, because she has always trusted each of us kids. My mom has never been a person that has ever doubted us. She's always believed in us and tried to give us the absolute best life that she possibly could and help us to thrive and obviously live. So my brother and my sister and myself, we've all kind of followed as far as the interest in anything that is sci-fi related or paranormal related. I love all of the James Wan films or anything that has to do with werewolves or anything like that. So it's been just in our lives forever, I guess you could say.
Sounds like you've got a really cool mom. That's great.
She is. She's wonderful.
It sure sounds like it. Yeah, I can understand why you would say that.
Yeah.
From what I understand, Hannah, several family members and friends of yours have had Dogman encounters of their own. What can you tell us about their experiences?
So as far as a few of our friends, we had a friend that was about half a mile down the road. He came over, I would say at least once or twice a week, sometimes more. He was good friends with my dad, and he had to leave for work early in the morning quite often because he was a truck driver. And one morning he was telling us about how he felt a bit uneasy when he was leaving for work, and he was just going out driving his usual route and everything, going about 45 miles an hour, and he saw something in his peripheral keeping up with them. And so he looked over to the left of his car and he saw a dog that's head was right there at his window level. And he wasn't driving a truck, but he was driving just a regular car, and he couldn't believe his eyes. He thought, how is this dog going so fast? I'm going 45 miles an hour and it's keeping up with me. And he just thought it was really strange, but we were mentioning on how we believe in, dogmen and everything. And he said he's a firm believer as well now that he's seen what he's seen, and that could have been what it was. So that was the only one as far as him. We also had a neighbor down the way that was about 2 houses down. He was the neighbors of some of our friends. He rented from them on their property. And we would have it sometimes throughout the years to where all the dogs in the neighborhood would start going off. And it kind of came like a line. So up by part of our hill, which was down towards the road, towards the main road, but still up towards the hill, we would have dogs start barking there, and it would trickle down all the way up to our place. And at some point, we did have 6 dogs. We've had less than 6 dogs, but we've had quite a few. And they would start barking as well, kind of going a bit crazy. Sometimes they'd calm down because Dad would tell them to be quiet. But we would listen out, just listening out the windows or have a window crack or something, and we'd hear all the dogs in the neighborhood going off. So there was one night all the dogs were barking, and the neighbor guy came out of the house and he grabbed his gun just to see what was out there. Figured he'd see a bear or something, and it was a full moon, so he could see around everywhere. And he looked down towards where our place was. You couldn't see our house from where he was standing, but he walked out into the road and he was looking around trying to figure out what was out there. And as he looked straight down towards our place, he saw a very tall, fluffy figure. He didn't know how to describe it. He said he knows for sure it wasn't a bear. It was running on 2 legs and it was running down towards our place. Creeped him out enough to where he went back inside the house. And I feel like he moved out of there within the next couple weeks to a month. He was done with Oregon House. So I think he actually moved to the city, but I can't guarantee which city. And then we had some friends that lived a couple miles away from us. We went to homeschool group with them. We went to church with them. They were a wonderful family. But when they were explaining to us about certain things that were going on around their home, she was more so explaining it because she was a very firm, deep Christian. She, instead of thinking that, oh, they're going to be werewolves or, oh, there's something else, she thought they were demons. But her husband said he didn't want us kids playing down with our airsoft guns because they were playing out in the woods in their back area. They had about 5 acres, lots of woods, and then a huge open field. And he wanted us all to come back up and stay out of the woods from here on out because he saw a very big dog come out of the woods after we finished up with our airsoft game. And we went inside to have pizza. It was for our friend's birthday. And there was about 6 of us kids. He saw this huge dog come out of the woods, and it got up on its 2 hind legs and put its paw up on the tree and was sniffing around, just walking around back there. And it officially creeped him out, and he doesn't want anyone to go out back there in that area no more. And his wife, I believe it was a couple months earlier, she was driving with her sister at night, and they were heading back to her house, and they saw some big dogs. She drove an SUV, mind you. I mean, a big SUV, not just some little Blazer, a little truck. They were driving home, and they had these dogs. I think there was about 3 or 4 of them that walked in front of her car, and their backs were about as tall as the back of her car. And they were just walking, and they turned and they looked at them, and they kept on moving, just regular dog-like. But she was really surprised because she's like, wow, we got wolves in this area. Those dogs were huge. And she told my mom about it. My mom's sitting here thinking, she's like, no. Those aren't just any dogs. Those aren't just any wolves. Like, I know exactly what that is. But she's like, oh, she's going to think I'm crazy. So my mom kind of kept it to herself for a bit. And then the last one with the same family was their son went out to get wood one night. It was during the winter. And he went out to go get some wood to bring inside the house. And he saw what he thought was his German Shepherd sitting over by the wood pile. And he said, hey, Sadie. And just said hi to her and went over, and he started to grab the wood, and he realized Sadie was inside of the fence up on the porch. So he instantly got freaked out and ran inside and told his mom about it. And again, my mom's sitting here, she's like, okay, well, I think this is actually what's going on with you. And of course, she refused to believe my mom, and she said, no, I think this is more demonic than it is. I don't think it's actually any wolf men or werewolves or anything like that. I don't believe in that kind of stuff. It's definitely got to be demons. So my mom let it be. And another time, as far as people that are related to us, it was actually my Uncle Earl. He grew up in Organ House. He was my grandpa's brother. I believe, I want to say he was probably about almost 10 years older than my grandpa, probably even older than that. But he lived in the same place that they lived in Collins Lake before the government took their property away and everything. And at one point, my uncle got woken up by my grandpa screaming bloody murder. And my uncle instantly just kicked into gear, ripped the sheets off of him, ran to my grandpa's room, jumped on top of him, and kept asking him, what's wrong, sweetie? What's wrong? What's going on? Are you hurt? What's going on? And trying to figure it out. My grandpa just kept screaming. He was probably about 7 or 8 years old at that time. And my grandpa was screaming, and he was looking towards his window that was a good 7, 8 feet off the ground. And my uncle turned around and he looked up the window, and he just saw a big head. He said it looked like a wolf head. It was no bear, that's for sure. And he said that thing was a good 7 feet tall. And so he went and he let the dogs loose, and the dogs went chasing it until you couldn't hear the dogs anymore. And he had 2 encounters, my uncle did. So that was the first time that he had. The second time that he had was when he was driving home one night, and he had an old beat up truck, and he was driving up the hill, and he heard loud howling. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 or 3. It was like a pack. And he said that was no coyotes, but that was loud. He had his windows rolled down a little bit. He's slowly going up the hill because it takes a while to get up there. And as he was going up, he had these huge dogs, he said, just come running out of the woods. And one tried nipping at his face through the window. One jumped in the back of his truck. They were coming up the side and walking in the front of his truck, and his car was shaking and getting ready to die. And so he had to turn off the headlights to get some power. And he was terrified at that point because he's got all these dogs all around him. He's like, man, they're going to eat me. So he turned off his headlights and put his pedal to the metal, and he floored it out of there and knocked the one that was in the back of his truck out. And he floored it home as fast as he could. And he didn't want to drive out at night anymore. And he told us all this stuff when we were at a family reunion up in Oregon House at my uncle's place. So he said he was absolutely terrified of that town and he didn't like being there no more. So he moved up to Red Bluff, and he doesn't like going back to Oregon House anymore. And he hasn't really since, actually. So he's had quite a bit.
Well, I can understand why you wouldn't want to go back. I don't think anyone would want to go back after experiences like that.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, that's not good. Do you think the encounters you had involved dogmen, Hannah, or do you think they're actually werewolves?
I don't fully know the difference between the two of them, to be completely honest. I think, as far as from what I understand, werewolves or skinwalkers are people who transform into wolves. And then there's actual dogmen they're big dogs, but then they can walk like actual people, and they're big and bulky, like big old bouncers kind of deal.
Yeah, in essence, you nailed it. It sounds like you think they were definitely dogmen. Did I understand you correctly?
Correct. Before, we used to always call them werewolves for everything. We didn't quite know the differences up until, kind of doing our own research and kind of figuring between, but we've just always called them werewolves up until all that. Now they're just dogmen.
Good. I'm glad you know the difference. All right, Hannah, please tell us about your encounters now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
So when I was about 6 years old, I stayed the night at my aunt's house. We owned this property, or my grandparents owned this property up in Oregon House, where my dad's mom's father built a home, and it was a 4-bedroom house, and we lived in there for multiple years. I moved in there when I was about 4, so maybe about 17 years for myself. There was a house that was right behind it, which we called the Little House. It had a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and that was in the middle of the property. We lived on about 1.5 to 2 acres. And then we had a trailer that was put onto the property, and it was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath living room with just a straight shot trailer. And around it was built a huge shed. So there was 2 entrances to it with 2 doors that opened up, and you can park a car in there for a parked car garage, or in the back area, my dad used to work on cars back there. So as far as that mapping of it, towards the left of the property was nothing but woods all the way past Collins Lake. Towards the right of the property, there was our neighbors who were not very good people to be around. We'll just say that. So we didn't actually really make friends with people until my uncle moved up there, and he'd have our cousins every weekend, so his kids. Other than that, we pretty much kept to ourselves. We were homeschooled all our lives, and we'd go to homeschool groups and everything like that, but pretty much we'd stick around just our home. We had goats and chickens and rabbits, and then we had our dogs. We've had anywhere between 2 dogs and 6 dogs, depending. And when my cousin asked for us to stay the night down at their place, they moved back from Alaska, and they lived down there for a little bit until they found a home later on up in Forbes-town. And my cousin wanted me to sleep in the living room with her. Her parents slept in the back bedroom. And then on the porch outside where the 2 doors were in the big old garage shop, my cousins had a bunk bed. And it was my 2 boy cousins, and they wanted my brother to sleep out there with them. So it was just the 2 of us staying the night. And my cousin was notorious for scaring me. She always tried to scare me. She was about 4 years older than me, so she was probably about 9 or 10 at this time. And she told me at one point that there was a bear that liked to come and watch her every night as she slept. And I, of course, was scared. So I didn't know if she was messing with me or not, but I wasn't going to take any chances. So I grabbed the blanket and I put it over my head and I just hid under there and tried to sleep, but I was too terrified at the same time too. And eventually she said, "The bear is here. It's watching us right now." And I didn't want to look, but part of me wanted to see what the bear looked like because I've never seen a bear in my life. So I gently pulled the blankets down over my face just enough to look out the window towards the left of us. Didn't see a single thing. And I looked over at her because she was on the left of me and she had the blankets down just below her eyes and she was looking out the window that was at our feet. And I'd say that was probably about a good 6.5 feet off the ground as far as the window level. And I just saw this big silhouette and I saw the light reflect off of it. So I saw the brown in the hair and just a huge head just staring in at us, ears pointed up. And I thought, wow, that bear is huge. It could jump in anytime and it can eat us. And then I was thinking of my brother that was out on the porch with my cousins. They had a piece of wood that would go in between the slots of the doors so to keep it locked. Sometimes because it's all closed in, it could get a little stiff. And so they would try and open it up and let the air breeze through and stuff. So I was thinking, I got to go out and get my brother. And I told my cousin, I said, we need to go out and get the boys. We got to bring the boys inside. And she said, they're fine. It doesn't want them. It wants me. It's always watching me. And so I was just sitting there staring at it. And eventually I just pulled the blankets up over my head and ignored it and tried to fall asleep. And that's actually what got me to start watching Dog Soldiers later on, was because we always had sci-fi on. And I saw a preview. And in that preview is where there was a dog soldier that was standing out in the field, and you just see the silhouette of it and it's breathing and you see all the fog going up the side and it just makes like a hiss noise. And that brought me back to that exact point. And I realized what we saw was not a bear. Every little last shape of it, the how big the head is, the way that it breathed, and the exact air, how you'd see the air and stuff going in the cold air, it all matched it perfectly. And I instantly came to that realization that was definitely a Dogman. The second encounter that I had, I was 14 years old. I went to bed just like any regular night. And on this particular night, I woke up and I was outside. I was sitting on the trampoline. It was dark outside except for where there was a light in the back of our house up in a tree that we've had up there for a long time. And I was just questioning, why am I outside? It's dark. I'm afraid of the dark. I always have been. And there's no crickets. There's nobody else out here. But how did I get out here? And I heard a noise coming from the back a little bit, and I saw a shadow casted, and I saw just a huge shadow being casted from over by the light, and I saw the ears pointing up, and I thought, whoa, there's a bear coming. So I'm just going to go inside and be as quiet as I possibly can, so hopefully it doesn't hear me. So I got off the trampoline very slowly, very quietly. I started walking up to the house, and as soon as I got to the sidewalk, I froze. And I felt something just staring at me from my right all the way down at the end of the house. And I saw it in my peripheral. And I looked straight down the sidewalk, and I saw this good, I'd say 6-7 foot tall creature. Definitely not a bear. It was like a huge, I'd say bouncer type, very fuzzy, dark, standing on two legs, hands out to the side, like how you'd see a bouncer, to where they're like ready to fight pretty much any time, and ears pointing up. And I just felt my heart stop. I was so terrified. So I bolted inside the house as fast as I could. Luckily, the front door was unlocked. I must have unlocked it when I was walking out or something, because my mom is very good about locking all the windows, all the doors, always has been. So I ran inside and I locked the deadbolt first, and then I locked the other one, and I just looked out the window. There's big old triangles, big old diamond shaped plexiglass in the window. multiple different spots. I'd say there was probably 5 of them, and there's a couple other small spots. And I just see it about, I'd say probably 5 or 6 inches from my face. And it was a wolf head. It was black, eyes piercing. I always described it as yellow, but as my mom would correct me, she thinks it was amber eyes. I'd say the teeth were probably, at least the canines were probably about a good inch to 2 inches long. It was drooling. Its ears were probably a good 3 inches long, sticking right off the top of its head. And when I looked at it, the best way I could describe it as the Van Helsing werewolf, where it was big and bulky and black, but bigger. And I just couldn't believe my eyes. I thought, I'm in a dream. This is a nightmare. So I just stared at it. It stared at me, and I felt it like piercing through my soul. So I just very quietly and calmly just started walking back very slowly, walking past my parents' room, walking past the laundry room, and walking over to the wood stove. And I'm still keeping eye contact with it. There's a room right across the stove that was a spare room. So I just gently slid over into there. I put my back up against the doorway of the room, and I just was breathing and calming myself down and was thinking, this has got to be just a nightmare. This isn't real. And I'm pinching myself, and I felt myself pinching myself and realized, okay, so this is real. So maybe I just imagined it, and I just woke up in the hallway, maybe sleepwalking or something. And I peer out the door frame, and I look down towards where I saw the werewolf again, or Dogman, in the kitchen area. And it has its hand up on the glass at this point. And its hand is a good, I'd say at least a good 6-7 inches long. And its nails were definitely like claws. And they were also black from what I could see. It was probably a good distance away, about 20, 30 feet away. And it just had its hand up on there, and I'd say its claws were about a good inch or 2 long, at least. And it was just staring at me. Still had its mouth slightly open, still saw the drool, still keeping perfect eye contact. I swear it didn't even blink. And at that point, I was just like, maybe I'm a goner. Maybe this is it. It's probably going to get me in my sleep, but I'm going to bed. So I just backed up to my bedroom. I believe at that time I still shared the room with my sister. So she had her bed on one wall. I had my bed on another. I went into my room and shut the door, and I locked it. I looked out my window, which was maybe only a good 5.5 feet off the ground. So anyone or anything could come in there. It was already locked and shut, and that's pretty much all I could do. Mom always had a wooden dowel in the window just to prevent us getting out or, someone coming in. We didn't have the greatest neighbors. So I felt semi-safe-ish. I hopped back in bed. I pulled the blankets up over my head, and I just prayed to God. And I kept praying and praying and praying until I fell asleep. And I didn't expect to wake up the next morning. But as soon as I did, I ripped those blankets off me, and I ran straight to my mom to tell her everything that happened. And not once did I feel like she didn't believe me. She listened to every last thing that I had to say. And then that's when I feel like we started really getting involved into learning about our area and learning about Dogmen and everything. With my third encounter, I can't fully say it was a third encounter, but I feel like it was. My dad had a very big white truck with his work that he would back up from the road up towards the house. And if you looked out the front of our house, you just see a big open field and lots of trees all around. It kind of goes like a dome. There's an old tractor that was sitting out in that field. And if you look up towards the sky, it was just complete, beautiful open sky. And I thought, I'm going to sit on the front of my dad's truck, and I'm just going to look at the stars and just relax a little bit. We were raking all day and cleaning up the property, and Mom was getting food and stuff ready. So it was probably about maybe 8 or 9 o'clock, I'd say. The sun was already down, and it was time to wind down a bit. And we've always gone outside with the telescope. and we'd be looking at the stars or try to look for a meteor shower or something and look for shooting stars and everything. So it was peaceful, and I didn't feel uncomfortable at all out there. And I was sitting on the front of his truck and watching the stars for a little bit, and I heard a shuffle in the leaves over where we raked them all up at one point. And I just looked over where I heard the shuffle because it sounded kind of big, and I thought it was my brother. I saw a shadow over, like, hugging up against the tree over there, and I said, "I see you over there. You can't scare me. I already know it's you. I already see you." And I thought that he was still trying to be as still as possible and not try to, thought that he was still being sneaky as long as he didn't move. So I jumped off the truck and I went to walk over to show him, like, "I see you. You can't scare me." And as I was walking over towards it, I looked inside the house and I saw him kneel down to pet our dog. And I instantly was like, you know what? Mom doesn't scare me. My sister doesn't try to scare me like this. And my dad doesn't play around. So I booked it towards the house because I knew it was neither of them. As I was running towards the house, it came running at me up the side of the house. And I ripped open the front door and I ran inside and I said, "Something's chasing me." And my mom and my brother instantly went outside to go check it out and see what it was. The porch light was already on and everything. And we walked up the side of the house and I was showing him exactly where it was and where it came from, and that I thought my brother was trying to scare me, and it's not what happened. But again, they never doubted me for even a second. So it kind of looked around, you saw the leaves were ruffled up and stuff, but that's about it. There was no any actual proof or anything like that. And one of my other ones that I've had was where I was with my sister. We would go out to the edge of our property in the woods a little ways. I can't exactly determine how much now, but I was about 14, 15 years old. So my sister was probably about 10 or 11 years old. I really liked doing photography. It was one of my favorite things to do in school. And so I went out there with my sister and we would do our makeup or we'd do our hair. Or we would just dress in fun clothes or something. And we always went to this madrone tree. Now, my brother and us, we've gone on adventures and stuff before, but my brother's not really one for going out and taking pictures just for fun and looking cute. If we're not going to go out and adventure, he doesn't want to come with us. That's just boring to him. So me and my baby sister went out there and we were hanging out at this madrone tree and we would take pictures. And this has happened multiple times. I can't even tell you how many, probably over 10. We'd go out to this madrone tree and take pictures and just have fun. We'd climb it, we'd sit on it and just hang around like in the woods area and just get nice backgrounds and stuff of nature and everything. And never felt unsafe out there. We just had a good time with each other. And there's one day I felt really uneasy, like we were being watched at all times. And I kept looking over my shoulder, looking around, and I felt like maybe we probably shouldn't be here right now. My sister asked me, What do you see? What do you hear? What's going on? And I said, I just feel like something's out there and maybe we should get going. So we jumped out of the tree and we heard a huge thud. And then we'd take a step, we'd hear a step with us. And we'd take a step, we'd hear a step with us. And then we decided we got to run. Probably not the smartest idea, but we were kids and kids do dumb things. But we booked it to the house. And we were running through the woods as fast as we possibly could, and something was definitely chasing us. We ran up to the barbed wire fence, which was in between our house and where the madrone tree area was, which is just open woods everywhere. And I stopped in the middle of the barbed wire fence as my sister ran through. She's the fastest person when she gets scared. She's already halfway through the field in between our place and the fence. And I said, "Quick, take a picture. Like, I don't think it's coming after us anymore." And she's all, "No, you're on your own." So she went booking it to the house as fast as she could. And I got through the barbed wire fence and I went after her and we kept looking out there and didn't see anything, didn't hear anything anymore. And we've never gone back to that tree since. Now, my final encounter that I for sure had, I worked at Kmart in Yuba City. I broke up with my boyfriend of 2 years at the time, and I was traveling back and forth between my parents' house and work. And usually I'd get off there around like 10, 11 o'clock at night sometimes. I would stop in and see my friends or something here and there and hang out with them. And sometimes I'd come home a bit late, or sometimes I wouldn't come home at all, just stay the night down there because I'd have an early shift. Well, I didn't have work the next day, so I decided I'm going to hang out with friends for a little bit, and I'm going to go see my parents and stay at my parents' place the next day. So I was driving up the hill, and I was on Marysville Road, enjoying my time. I had my big old 1987 Chevy Suburban, and I was just cruising. There's nobody else out there, and I was driving up to Rice's Crossing to turn down there to head home. I was probably about a good 5 minutes away from home. And I saw a bag in the road. Or what I thought was a bag in the road. It was just a big white bag from what I thought. And I just saw that in my peripheral. And then I saw these 3 deer on the corner of Rice's Crossing. So it'd be to the right of it. And there was this house behind that. And then down Rice's Crossing to my right is just an open field and a little hill that goes down. And I saw the deer and I slowed down a little bit because obviously you don't want a deer to run out in front of you. And I'd really like not to crash my car. So I was slowing down a little bit and I looked over to this bag because I saw this bag moving, and I just looked straight at it and realized it's not a bag at all. It is a pure white Dogman. It's down to the ground as close as it could possibly get with its left arm in front of it. Definitely a hand, not a paw. Also had black claws, but white everywhere else on it. And then its right hand is back, I'd say maybe by its ribs. And it had a very long, white, bushy tail that was sticking straight out and fluffed right behind it. It had its left leg up underneath its ribs on its left, and then its other leg stretched out, touching the side of the hill that it was coming down from. And those definitely, from visualizing it, those definitely look like just giant dog paws. It was staring straight, big snout, ears pointed straight up, and it was focused in on those deer. And I had my high beams on, and I am assuming I just really made it mad. It snapped its head to me and looked to the right, and it had piercing red eyes, and I could see its teeth, same teeth as the Dogman I saw before. Same length. It was drooling and everything as well. And I, instead of slowing down, decided to put my foot to the metal, and I was flooring it around this corner. I'd usually take that corner probably about 25 miles an hour. This time I was probably going 45 or 50. And I raced down the stretch of road to get home. And then I turned onto Manthony Lane and I flew up the hills there to get home. Usually I lock up my Suburban when I get home because I just don't trust people around. As soon as I got there, I turned off the engine. I shut the door. I got into the house. Didn't bother taking a shower or anything. I just went straight to bed and did exactly what I do best. And I just prayed my heart out until eventually I felt better and I could fall asleep. And I did. I rested eventually after that, but I decided I don't want to live in Oregon House anymore. I don't want to be around here. I don't feel safe here, and decided that it was time to move. So a couple of years later, when I did actually move, I got married and moved into Yuba City, and I've pretty much lived in the city since. And my parents have property out here in Palermo, and they have some activity that goes on time to time. Haven't actually seen anything, but they've heard things here and there. And after thinking, oh, we get out of Oregon House and we get away from all that, we won't have to worry about that no more. And they're like, well, we just moved into another hot spot. But we just do what we do best and put our faith in the Lord and feel like He'll protect us. And like you've told me, remember those 7 words. So it's been good ever since, I'd say.
Well, I don't think anyone could blame you for moving into the city after having all those Dogman encounters. Goodness gracious.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's intense. When you had that first encounter, you had several dogs in the house with you. How did they respond when all this was going on?
Absolute silence. I was really impressed when I thought about the details later on, because we had our dog Tonka. She was half Rottweiler, quarter Husky, and quarter Wolf. She wasn't a big dog, but she was a good medium-sized dog, and she had a docked tail, but if she needed to be aggressive and attack anyone, she definitely could. I got bit by a gopher once, then she came running around that corner and ate that gopher. Anybody who was being a bit mean to me, she'd get all mean and gruff and stuff, like as far as our cousins if we'd be playing around. But she was completely silent. And the other dog we had at that time, I believe, was Lady, and she was a rat terrier. And I think she also kind of had a big attitude and stuff time to time, but it was absolute silence. I was really surprised when I thought about it later. I was like, none of the dogs did anything. There was no crickets. There was no noises, like no goats were making noises or anything. It was just silent, clear across. I don't know if it could have just been, me being so scared that I couldn't hear anything, but I couldn't even hear the breathing or hear if there was any noises or anything from the Dogman either. There was nothing, just absolute pure mute silence.
That's the way it normally is when dogmen come around. After having such a traumatic experience at such a young age, Hannah, how could you function at school and live your life in an effective way?
I just did. I didn't fully think about it too much for a bit there. I obviously didn't go out into the woods for a long time. Here and there, my brother and my sister can kind of get me to go out in the woods. It'd be my brother, my sister, myself. Sometimes we would take our cousins out there or one of our friends, and we'd all just kind of play around in the field next to us or go on my uncle's property because he had 5 acres, which was right across the road from us. And we'd venture off a bit, but I wouldn't go too far. When they said, hey, let's go up towards what we called the marshes, which was I'd say probably about halfway between our house and Collins Lake. It was just a huge open field. Sometimes it would get flooded and it looked like marshes. And I believe the property's owned by PG&E. I'm not sure, but I know we would run around up there quite a bit. But I stopped going on adventures with them. About this age is when I decided I want to graduate high school early and I want to graduate with my brother. So I really buckled down and just started working on homework all the time. I became that boring sister. So I just didn't really want to go out to the woods too much. I was more so a homebody. I would stay home and I would clean. I would visit people when they'd come over, hang out with my parents and their friends. And every Friday night, because we were going to karate for so many years, Friday nights we would get home from karate and we'd have our Subway sandwiches or we'd have our Papa Murphy's and we'd be sitting in the living room, just all of us as a family would be eating dinner and watching sci-fi like Stargate SG-1 or Stargate Atlantis or something. And during the weekends is when all the good movies came on sci-fi, which was my Dog Soldiers that of course I had to record and such. And other than that, I just pretty much stay inside. But as far as fear, like how, for school or going to bed or when I went to college or anything like that, I wasn't really too afraid. I would pray every single night I went to bed, and I still do. And I think honestly, if anything, it just kind of helped me build in my faith in an even better way. Even now, because I've heard of encounters and stuff, that have happened in the city and happened in town and stuff. I'm like, you know what? Like, they're everywhere. And if anything's going to harm me or hurt me, then it's going to happen. And there's nothing that I can really do about it. I just sit there and I pray like crazy. When I have my daughter with me, then nothing can stop me. I mean, I'm arachnophobic, but I've waxed spiders off of her or off myself with absolutely no fear. And it's like, I don't know. It's just an instant, like, mom has to be in control. Mom has to protect her child. And I would do anything and everything. So I feel if it came between, if I ever came in an encounter with one between me and my daughter, I would just tough up right then and there. Obviously, I'd be protective of her and stuff and just the best I possibly can. But to be honest, I just put my faith in the Lord.
Well, like I told you earlier, it sure sounds to me like you had a great mom, and I'd say without a doubt your daughter can say the same thing, so I'm impressed.
She can, and she loves both me and my mom. My mom's her best friend, especially when she gets sick. She's always like, I want to go to grandma's. She's going to make me raspberry tea and she'll cuddle me better. So she's definitely one of my best friends for sure.
Yeah, sounds like you're both lucky to have each other, so yeah, that's a great thing. Before we continue with tonight's show, I've got some important news for you. On August 20th, the premium membership program is ending. That means after August 20th, there's only going to be 2 ways to listen to the show. You can use your favorite podcast app to listen, or you can use the Dogman Encounters YouTube channel to listen. If you go to dogmanencounters.com and visit the podcast page, you'll find a list of podcast apps that you can use to listen to the show, and you'll find a link to the Dogman Encounters YouTube channel. All right, let's get back to the show. The answer is probably no, but when you're nose to nose with that dogman at the window, did you ever get a chance to see what kind of leg structure he had?
I did not, I don't believe. When I was standing out there and I saw it down the sidewalk, I did though. It looked like the knees were bent backwards and it had just giant paws that were planted firmly on the ground. But all I really remember is it looked like it had huge thighs. It was a huge build, like it's a bodybuilder. And like I said, the knees went backwards. So as if you would look at a dog, just a regular dog. And I'd assume, like what I've heard in your previous podcasts and stuff, is the way that it has to hold up this big body, because it doesn't look like it's a thin body. It's a very thick, muscular body. I'd say the one I saw at that time, I'd probably say a good maybe 250, 300 plus pounds. It was big, and like, we all know the muscle's very dense, so I'd assume that it had to just hold all that up.
Well, I'm sure it was a specimen. When you backed up away from that window and went past your parents' bedroom as you were backing up, why didn't you try to wake them up and get their attention?
That is also what surprised me. I think I was just in shock and I couldn't really focus on what to do. All I was really thinking is I have to get to my bedroom. But I think I was trying to process in between getting to my bedroom, but at the same time, I might still be in a dream. And so once I realized I wasn't in a dream, I was already too far away from my parents' bedroom and I did not want to walk back up there closer. And I know if I would have got my brother, I love him to pieces. He's a wild child. He probably would have been like, okay, let's go. And at that time, I think he was probably 15 years old. He was just a tough and ready for anything kind of guy.
Did you ever suffer any PTSD after having that experience? Because that really was a rough encounter.
To be honest, yes. Pretty much anytime I walk around at night and I'm by myself, like even now, I work at one of my jobs is a sports bar. I go out the back and I take out the trash quite often. Anytime I walk into that back room, the lights are usually off back there during the weekday, unless it's the weekend. And I have to flick a switch, but I have to uncover it to flick switches. And it's just a big old open shed and it's completely pitch black in there. It drives me nuts. And there's also another door on the outside of that can be opened from the opposite end towards the gate and the door to get out that way towards the trash bins. So there's been multiple times that I've just kind of thought about it. What if I open up this big door and there's just one there or one around the corner, and go into the mop room and, oh, it's pitch black in here too. It's just like anywhere that I can't see. I've always been afraid of the dark though. So it's not even just Dogmen. It's just, I get creeped out on what might be in the dark. What if there's, we have a lot of homeless people. What if there's a crazy homeless person out here or something, One of the things which I told you about earlier was, the most recent one was Sunday. Cause I knew I was going to be talking to you. I was kind of thinking about what I would be telling you as far as which way to place my encounters to where it would make sense, as best details as I could possibly pull up, because from listening to your podcast, you'd always ask about details, and I was thinking about it all and told these stories multiple times before. But when I was walking out to take out the trash, I had kind of a big trash bag that I was bringing out there to the back, and I had to walk through the back door where they're playing loud music. It's a sports bar, so loud music. And I was walking out to this area, which is completely open, probably about 100 by 100, as far as, how big it is. And, 100 feet, sorry, excuse me. And when I was walking out to the gate, there's the trash bins, and you could probably fit a good, I'd say at least 8 to 10 cars back there. So that big old lot is just completely open. And then behind that is where I usually park, where there's a huge parking lot area. And usually that's completely empty by the time I go out there, because there's another bar and there's another club back there that really aren't full during the weekdays at all. So when I was walking out to the back to throw away the trash can or the trash bag, I opened up the trash can because we have to unlock it because, like I said, there's a lot of homeless people out there. And so when I was unlocking it, I was putting this bag up and trying to throw it into the trash bin. And there was somebody walking over in the parking lot back there. And of course, out of all things I have to do when I have all this going on my mind is let out a very huge howl. I freaked out so bad and just flung that trash bag in there as fast as I could. I scraped up my knuckle and I locked it all up real fast. And I realized that's a homeless person and they're just being weird and howling. And I started laughing at myself instantly because, of course, you would think, normally somebody would just drop the bag and run away. Well, I didn't want my coworkers to think I'm crazy. So obviously I just throw the trash away and be done with it. No need to go back out there. So here and there, it kind of gets to me and I think about it. But when I kind of get in those places and stuff to where I feel like I'm being watched or I feel like something's around me, that's pretty much where my mind goes to first. But I just kind of take a moment and I just pray at that point. And I laugh at myself and everything. I'm just like, not everything is that. It could just be a quiet night or, maybe there's an owl that's up in the tree watching you or something, or maybe a neighbor's looking out the window and seeing who's taking the trash out or something. And I come to realization, like, that's why I feel like I'm being watched. Somebody just sees me. They're out there on the sidewalk smoking or something. And I just calm myself down from there. But it'll get better eventually. It's just, I have to kind of take and break it down a little bit here and there.
That's right. Yeah, please remember those 7 magic words I told you about. And if you practice saying them in time, it definitely will get better.
And I appreciate that. I already feel better just from our talk the other day too. And just feel kind of like a peace of mind, I guess you could say, and kind of being able to let it out. It just kind of pulls a little bit of weight off my shoulders. And like I said, I've talked to friends and I've talked to family and stuff, and it feels good even then. But just especially getting out to somebody who's had so much experience as far as, listen to everybody else's experiences as well, just really helps a bit.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that the conversation helped. Remember, like I told you, you hold the keys to how difficult or how easy this is going to be to deal with moving forward. So, yeah, please remember those 7 magic words. And as you'll see, it definitely will get a lot easier to deal with.
Correct. And I appreciate that.
Well, you're welcome. You are welcome. Before we move on, if you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, either way is fine, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. Also, you should know I've got a new Bigfoot show I'm producing. It's called My Bigfoot Sighting, and I put a link for it in the description for tonight's show. You really should check it out. If you listen, you'll see that it's a different kind of Bigfoot show, and I think you'll like it. Alright, now that I've shared that with you, let's get back to the show. After already having had 2 Dogman encounters, Hannah, I'm sure a lot of the listeners are wondering why you would lay outside at night the way you did when you had that 3rd encounter. What would you say to them about that?
I think I just kind of pushed it out of my mind. I just kind of figured maybe because it was different times a year. So usually when I had, I think it was when I had those encounters was winter and fall time. At this point, we were still in summer. So I think it was about August. So you kind of think of it like as if like a cycle. So you know how bears will hibernate during the winter, or you know how, like, say, I think it's during the summers when we've had some cougars come around and stuff. And so it was just usually during the summer, but not the other seasons. So I think I just kind of took that into place. Like maybe, they only come around during the winter. They probably hibernate during the summer. I kind of thought about it like that. So I wasn't afraid at all during the summer. We'd always hear crickets and everything all around, and it never really bothered me. until then. Then I thought about it and I was like, you know what? Maybe it's every single season and it just is what it is. But ever since then, I've never really been outside in the dark ever by myself since, at least up in Oregon House or in my parents' place. Even then, walking between my mom and dad's house now and the little house in the back, that's now my sister's. I still get nervous in between that little bit of a stretch. And I'd say that's probably about a good 150 feet away from their house. And then out in the back area is a big old field. We got sheep to the right. We got cows in front of the place. And then we have, I believe it's, goats on the other side. So we got livestock and stuff around. So that makes me a little bit uneasy sometimes too. But down towards the end of the property, it's just completely wide open for a while.
That's horrible. Here you were almost coming to terms with your encounters, and that had to happen. That must have really set you back. That's horrible. That's not good.
Yeah, for a bit there. But it'll get better.
Yeah, I'd say it did for a bit. How sure are you that dogman was really trying to catch you that night before you made it into the house when you had that third encounter?
At the time, I feel like he or she was really trying to, and with all the drool and everything, I kind of assumed like I was going to be its meal. After we talked about it the other day and how you said, they did not hurt me, it could have broken down the door. It could have made a big deal about it. It could have, come into the window. Like I'm sure that they could be sneaking up. We even had an attic that it could have crawled into and just lifted up. Like from the outside, you can climb into it and you could have lifted up a board that's in our hallway. Like if it really wanted to and it really scoped out the place and it really cared to, then I think it would have. I don't think there would have been anything to stop it. So thinking back on it and after what we've talked about now at this point, I don't really think that it was actually going to hurt me, but it just really wanted to scare me. It's just that middle part on where I went to bed and then I wake up on the trampoline that kind of makes me question it a little bit.
Well, that would make anyone question it. And yeah, I can understand why you would say all those things you just did about breaking into the house and getting you, like we talked about the other night. Yes, it definitely could have done all those things, but if you really wanted to get you and hurt you, you never would have made it into the house, period.
I completely agree to that. I feel like it was probably just messing around because it could definitely be a lot faster than me because even at 14 and all the working out and stuff that I did, I wasn't actually that fast at all. I'm sure it could have gotten to me if it really wanted to.
Oh, sure it could have. Yeah, no one's that fast. When you were driving home that night and saw that white one, did the thought ever pop into your head, why do I keep seeing these things?
I just assumed it was the area. I didn't fully think on why me or anything like that, especially after, my parents' friends and then, them having encounters just throughout the whole area. They tend to happen around Indian burial grounds and such. So we just assumed because we were so close to one, why wouldn't we have him up there? And there's also a cult up there as well. So it kind of figured is this like a spiritual thing? Is this, because of the Indian burial grounds? Is this just the area they've always been here or whatever it may be? But I just assumed because any time that it really happened was during what would be called the witching hour between 1 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the morning kind of times. And so I didn't actually see the times for those ones, but for sure the one where I was driving home, it was about 1:30 in the morning. So that's when it's a lot calmer and tamer around in those areas. And I just assumed it was probably just hunting time for them, that they'd come out during the nighttime. And I just happened to see them around then.
It was just dumb luck. I know it might be hard to believe, but yeah, it was just dumb luck and that's all there is to it. Well, having said that, Hannah, it's about time for us to get out of here. But before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
I would definitely just say, be cautious of your surroundings, but at the same time, don't let this kind of stuff prevent you from living life to the absolute fullest. I still go camping. I actually went camping a couple weeks ago in Crescent City and me and my boyfriend and my daughter slept out on a tarp and sleeping bags under the stars. I stupidly forgot the rods to the tent, and so we had to sleep out there for a bit, but it was still a nice experience. And I just think if you live your life in fear and you don't go and explore and do things, just still living life, then you're not truly living life. So just take it as an experience. And at the same time, not a lot of people actually get to see dogmen or Sasquatches or anything really paranormal. So just consider it, in a sense, I guess, kind of a blessing that you were one of those rare people that was able to, and take it with caution at the same time. So be prepared, but at the same time, probably not going looking for it. And then, if you ever feel like you can't talk to family or talk to friends or anything, I would, again, just suggest like what I did and just reach out to Vic and, just be able to, in a sense, debrief and be able to tell them about your experiences. And even if you don't want to do a podcast or you don't really want other people to hear you or know you or anything, just the fact of getting it out and getting that weight off your shoulders and knowing that you're not crazy or you don't feel like you've been heard this whole time, at least just having that one person that will completely believe you in every way, it just really helps relieve it all. So I'd suggest that just continue to live life and still proceed with caution.
Well, that's all very well said. I can't tell you how happy it makes me to hear that you're actually going out and living life still. As young as you are, you've got a lot of life left to live, so it's great to hear that you're camping and going out and doing things. It really would be a shame if you weren't doing that, so yeah, that really makes me smile when I hear you say that.
Thank you. I completely agree. I just got to keep on going and keep on trusting that things are going to be okay. And it also helps, just like I said, just constantly praying and, what's going to happen is going to happen, but just keep living in the moment and just take everything with caution.
Well, it goes without saying, I really do like the way you think.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, Han, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing all those experiences with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been a wonderful adventure, I guess, and it's another thing I can add on to my bucket list done, I guess.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks again so much. Have a great night.